You're good?
Yeah, oh my God, it's always just in time.
Check, check, check. 2, 3, check. We're live. All right. We had our normal technical difficulties, so Nat couldn't get on. Nat, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Nat was still on a lift from last week till about 20 minutes ago. So,
Yes,
yeah,
Arizona traffic. Come visit. Please don't.
just sucks. I have some disappointing news for everybody today. I know we lured you all in with talk about venomous snakes and poisonous snakes. We're going to get to that, I promise. It's a really short story, but the venomous snakes is not. I have some questions, and so does Nat. Nat's got better questions than I do. I'm just going to do some follow-ups with those. So, but we are going to talk about bridging the gap between actual scientists and hobbyists who might as well be scientists. So we're going to talk about that tonight in depth, well, about as much depth as we can get, with Lord Lunatic Christopher Wigglesworth Biggs. I was calling him Mr. Biggs. Apparently he's a lord. He has a piece of paper that proves it. But we're going to have him on with his beard and everything. So hope you're all excited. Nat, are you excited?
I am.
Do you know who our unsponsor is this week? I thought you were going to tell me who the unsponsor is.
No, you said it was going to be a random, mystery, so
yeah, so
I'm waiting.
Make one up. Just make one up.
Oh, okay. We are sponsored by water. Lots and lots of hydration. Water, yes.
I have that exact
the
same
living
cup.
lifeblood of everything.
Perfect. We could buy the show without water. We couldn't do the show without water.
We could not do the show without water.
Let's bring on Lord Wigglesworth Biggs.
Please.
There he is. He's laughing, so we're good.
Make him go away. Make him go away.
We try to.
But I do have a piece of paper. My wife got me the piece of paper for Christmas, so it's very official.
It's very official. It's got a seal on it.
It's in a dollar store frame.
There's a program where you can buy like a square foot of land in Scotland. Yeah, it makes you a lord. So
it's all over Facebook. It's very official.
Okay. All right. I would think it'll run out by now with so many people, so many Americans that want to be special. But you, sir, are special. You are the Mad Aquarist himself, Lord Mad Aquarist. Did I say that right?
Madness takes many forms.
Yeah. Well, you peg almost all of them, so we're good.
It's a necessity.
I've been talking to Biggs for a long time, actually, about the show, about hobby in general. He's given me a lot of advice, whether he knows it or not. I've had a lot of questions building my giant ant farm thing. That update, they're finally moving into it because I made them very uncomfortable where they decided to move. So I didn't leave them much choice. But Biggs, we're going to ask you some questions. You've been in the hobby for how many? You've been a hobbyist for how many years now?
Which hobby?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said hobbyist. I left it open.
I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. I've been inspired by nature ever since I was a kid. One facet or another, I'm inspired by nature. I remember having my dad was an avid gardener. I remember my dad always just fully embracing every aspect and showing us constantly. We used to have a cottage when I was a kid, and literally I spent the entire summer just roaming. When the world was safe, I'm not talking pandemic safe. I mean 30, 40, I'm 51 tomorrow. So, you go back 40 years ago, a kid could roam freely, could get on his bike and go wherever he wanted freely without any worry. But today, that's not the world we live in. But growing up and having a cottage out in the woods and being able to take out a canoe when I was 7, just go for the day, those are things. So I always embrace nature. And then I guess I evolved. My evolution changed. I got into the pet industry when I was in my very, very young early teens. And that kind of just exploded. I'd already been keeping fish. I'd already been bringing home snakes that I would find or random things. But that just opened the door for much more. And then university opened the door even further. And that's when I started specializing in a lot more obscure stuff. So people that follow my channel would know that, yes, I'm the Mad Aquarist. Yes, it started out primarily with fish. But I also have a lot of things on my channel that are either creepy, crawly, a lot of things with elements of danger, not just normal things of danger, but also things that you might take for granted that may be in your house that could be dangerous. And I'm not talking, microwaves and can openers and stuff. I'm talking some basic house plants that are either extremely toxic or nobody thinks of a plant as being violent, because the violence happens on a really, really small scale or on a very, very slow scale. Plants live different lives than us.
Oh, yeah. It's either an instantaneous burn from hell or a slow, throbbing pain that over time ends up being extremely serious.
I'll go put out a video on something like poison ivy, and it'll get like no views. Nobody wants to know about these horrible plants that are just around them.
I found it in my yard last week and had to find a way to get rid of it. I was pretty nervous, but
I have it all over the acreage here, and I'm highly, highly allergic to it. I'm so allergic to it that I've been, when I was a kid camping or in Boy Scouts of America. I was in Scouts and Cubs and all that stuff as a kid, and we'd go camping, and I'd come back, and when I was a kid, they didn't do anything for poison ivy. There wasn't anything you could do. Now they treat it like they just give you an antihistamine, like it's an allergy. I'm sorry, it's not an allergy. I can attest to you, it's not an allergy. I've been hospitalized with poison ivy, where they borderline almost put you into a coma so you don't move so they can deal with it. But this is, going back 30 plus years ago or 40 plus years ago. It's very challenging to imagine dealing with it then. And now,
do you have
regular poison ivy. No, I don't get that type of reaction. I just get, I can literally go transplant some trees out of the ditch onto my property just as the frost is left. And the poison ivy, no plants have even emerged out of the ground, but the roots are active. And I will literally transplant, and I will be covered on my arms, just absolutely covered. I used to get shots. I used to get medications and stuff like that. And now it's just basically as soon as you can, it's an oil. It's a urusol oil. You got to get the oil off your body as quickly as possible. And some people are more sensitive than others. All my daughters and my wife, not sensitive at all.
I'm the same way. Yeah, I could bathe in it probably, and I'd be fine.
Yeah, hate all of you.
Kid now. Uh-oh, did we lose you? Did we lose Nat?
So sorry, my Tegu's wrestling around, and she should be sleeping. Sorry, guys.
That's such a great animal. I got to tell you a story about a Tegu. I remember my first apartment when I moved out. It was a one bedroom apartment with a roommate, and it wasn't like a girlfriend. It was just a buddy, and he had the bedroom, and I had the living room, and no pets allowed. So on the cover of Nightfall, we moved in like 80 cages. And one of the animals that I had was a pair of wild Tufanandus teguixon, the golden black tegu. I think I've said that. Yeah. And I had a pair of them, nasty. And I had to get rid of his girlfriend because we gave her the B word. He just kept destroying her. These were wild caughts back then, right? So they were, very, very aggressive compared to these docile puppies that are available now, these captive breds. And he had an 8-foot by 3-foot cage. And I had 2 4-foot filing cabinets, and I put a filing cabinet at the foot of my bed and a filing cabinet at the head of my bed, and I put Nasty's cage on top of it. And it had sliding glass doors. Otherwise, the entire cage was wood. And it was over top of, here I'm going to date myself, over top of my water bed. So you had to sit on the edge of the bed and then lay down and then roll underneath the cage. And you would wake up every morning to that. I don't remember what that movie was, but there was some horror movie, Wes Craven horror movie years ago about people being doing voodoo and in their eyes or something. And these people would think they're dead, so they bury them. And then they're scratching at their coffin and stuff.
That's all they hear. That's all you hear in the morning.
That's every single morning.
That's
Nasty
what I was
would
hearing
dig.
Right now.
Oh, you'd wake up so fast.
You should be sleeping.
And as soon as you'd roll out of bed, you sit up and he'd lunge at the glass and snarl at you, and your head's right here. I'm awake.
Who needs
Great animal.
Oh yeah, no, they're definitely amazing creatures. So you kind of, I was actually going to jump in and ask a question about experience and stuff, and you jumped right in, and I was super excited about it. But I'm going to kind of go backwards and ask you. You said you went to university. Which university did you go to? What experience did you gain there? That allowed you to kind of get, yeah.
I went through a very different way. So some of the questions that you're going to ask me was about, you wanted to talk about how we bridge the scientific community and that stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really the guy, because my academia is a little bit different than most. But science and like biologies and all the natural sciences have always come very, very easy to me. Now, it's not a gloating thing. It's just, I would have to take grade 11 math twice to pass. But if I took biology and never went to a class, I could get a 90 plus on the test. That's just, they came very, very easy to me. And I honestly did not go to university right away out of school because I was a musician. I didn't care. I toured and I played music all over different places. And I didn't worry about anything. Life just happened around me. I didn't go back until I was a mature student. But because of my background with a lot of the sciences and stuff like that, I found things very, very easy in those elements. So I started doing a lot of stuff with basic sciences, and then I went into the study of fishes, which is ichthyology. And the problem I had is I didn't want to take what was an extreme passion of mine and possibly ruin it by sitting in a lab 7-8 hours a day studying minnows. Back then, today, if you went to university, and you might be in university now, and you want to study, this weird elapid snake in Cameroon, you can get funding and grant money, and you could damn well go and do that. Well, in Manitoba, Canada, you're going to study what's here. And that's pretty much unless you're going to come up with the money and do it yourself. So back in the day, that was really all there was. And I didn't want to do that. I was so passionate about fish, so I didn't want to change it. So I started diverting my interest to more what my father started pushing me was all in the botanical sciences, which is plant sciences. And that's where I got most of my background in sciences. But to be truthful, I never actually finished my my university grades. I basically walked out six months before I was completely finished all my big degrees. And the reason I walked out is I basically spent doing labs, teaching labs. And I had a person that was in a lab that was teaching a lab that I was taking, like an upper level lab. And she was the world's leading authority on one particular family of wolves, like a tribe of wolves or something. I don't know what it was, species of wolves, whatever. She'd spent her entire over 40 years in university and never once could get a job. And that was basically what it kind of just rang true to me. It's like, what am I going to do? Come out of here and I'm going to go, be able to study hay and grass and weeds of Manitoba. So I walked away, and I basically wanted to pave my own path and create something that I could do myself. But the science side of it never changed. So I could still read a complete monograph or dissertation or a breakdown or revision of a species. I can break down all that stuff. All that language that comes with that scientific side is all stuff that I've learned, and it's still there. It's a little more challenging as I got older to just all of a sudden cold pick up a book and try to read that. Like, what is that? What's an otolith? I got to remember what an otolith is, or what type of scale pattern or something like that. But otherwise, it's still there. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's up and beyond. Like, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've touched on the topic a lot. We touched on it with Scott Ellicott when he was on talking about the Low Rent Ants Canada episode we had. And then Natalie, you've contacted people for research papers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just did that today actually, and did a little research while I was supposed to be working. So I got paid to do research today. And you have too, right, Biggs? You're working with actual scientists from time to time.
Oh, all the time.
Right, like
all the time. I
guess.
Like some of the people that I interview, like for my channel, I want to be it as diverse as possible. I originally started out, like I said, doing mostly fish, but I realized very early on that my channel was going to have to diversify and be really me. I don't want this to be a negative towards anybody, but there's a really big YouTube channel, and this individual is actually a very good friend of mine. And this individual said to me once, he says, most YouTube channels have the ability to do 8 minutes of very scripted, very edited work. But a lot of them don't have any ability to have that basic conversation on the topic that they just did a video on. And it's very true. A lot of them are they just seem so hollow. That's not a shot at any one channel or any one individual. It's just that is the bulk of what is out there. There's a lot of exceptional channels as well, but that is kind of the bulk. Now, a dear friend, Rachel O'Leary, I don't know if you know who she is, but she's Miss Jinx. She lives in PA. She's been a dear friend for years. She has a channel. She has 150,000 followers or something like that. Massive channel. And she is one of those alternative type personalities like me. She's covered in tattoos. She had a giant mohawk for years and stuff like that. But she has such incredible knowledge base. She is extremely educated. And once people get past that, they're completely hooked with her passion and her knowledge. And her channel is dead on solid. But even her, she's evolving and changing. She's been doing fish for so long. Then she got a greenhouse, and then she's evolving that. And then she's had some changes in her life. And now all of a sudden she's going on adventures, things she's never been able to do before. And she's going kayaking and camping and all these adventures. And she's taking her cameras with her. So, like, if you're not evolving, you're dying.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I
don't know if I'm answering any questions. This is just Biggs rambling for like an hour.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay because we'll reel it back in. We'll reel it back in too. Because the thing is, though, the do help. But always, if you want to continue to call them ramblings, because there's so many bits of information still within that. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate, like I said, your time coming on.
Yeah, just throw up a tea or something at any time.
We'll start playing some music over here.
We'll just cut it out.
Just cut your mic. We'll just cut your mic.
Yeah.
I can do that, right?
Well, I guess we found each other. We found each other through isopods, really, right? And
yeah, that's how it started. Yeah.
I never planned on ever starting isopods. I had fish. The channel was doing fine. It was growing. And honestly, the minute I do a video that's not fish related, it doesn't get anywhere near the views that my fish videos do, because that's the bulk of my following. And even though you might have 1,000 viewers or 5,000 viewers or 10,000 or 1 million, it doesn't matter. They still have to actually watch the videos, right? And the topics have to be. So I found isopods in kind of in an odd way. And it was interviewing a friend of mine that was working with rattlesnakes. And that's near and dear to me. I've been dealing with rattlesnakes for large portion of my life. This book's from like early 1980. And this is the old Bible by Klauber. And that was my passion. So I was doing this interview, and he was keeping his cobras, his rattlesnakes, and a bunch of weird other Chinese species in aquariums or cages set up, and they were all called bioactive, which is this new trend. I'd never even heard of it because I wasn't doing vivariums. I wasn't doing a lot of stuff. I was doing fish tanks. And fish tanks are bioactive, for less of a better word. Right?
They absolutely are. Yeah.
Fully living systems. So when he showed me that, I was like, what do you mean bioactive? Like a house plant? You add all this stuff? He says, yeah, but on a bigger scale, like really bring nature into it. And like isopods and springtails. And that kind of opened my eyes. And then he got me in contact with friends at a place called Species Canada. And they're like dear friends now. I call them my pushers now. They're my pod pushers. But I'm not one of those guys that wants 60, 70, 80, 100, more and more and more. I don't want that. I have about 32 species of isopods now. It's too many. Yeah. Because if I have 6 of them and they all kind of do exactly the same thing and there's nothing unique and no story behind it or no unique science aspect that I can bring to the table about that species, I don't need it. It doesn't intrigue me at all.
Completely understandable.
Completely. That's where the isopods came from, right? And now you type in isopods, and I'm going to be one of the top 3 people. Besides me, Wally, and Russ, we're going to be the main ones for isopods. And I'm like, does nobody like these things?
And you got into it by accident? Yeah, our channel's like Iso Buddies. I don't think we've talked about isopods for a month. So
yeah, we haven't. No.
Yeah,
I think this is the most we've talked about isopods. I think
yeah, that you remember talking about a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think we really touched base at the beginning. Like I don't want to take over on isopod side, but when it comes to isopods, my science background really comes more into play after I've had them for about 1.5 years. I start looking at it, and I did that 2-part video, and I'm sure you saw it. Can we do it better? Or are we doing it right? Or something like that. I did a 2-part thing, and that had massive ramifications. Maybe for the odd person that made him question, well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could change that. I like what Biggs' idea about this or that. But what you guys don't get is the massive ramification it has to somebody like me, My brain has to go over each one of those details in an analytical way and look at it. You cannot take an inch of topsoil out of a bag, throw it in a Sterilite tub, drill a couple of holes in the top, spray it down with tap water, introduce isopods, and say, yay, I'm doing isopods. You cannot mimic the forest floor in that way. Forest floor is stratified every single year. Nobody cleans the forest, right?
Right.
It starts at the top and it works its way down until it's actually back down to dirt, right? And then it's uptaked by the other animals, like the plants and so forth. So how to mimic that. So I'm changing absolutely every aspect about how I do isopods. I haven't unveiled any of it yet because where I am, pandemic and all that other garbage, it's an absolute challenge for me to acquire anything. So I have 18 new tubs. Now I'm waiting on the vents to come. And I've got some vents I've ordered and some vents I'm getting custom made with an individual, and he's making and designing these new vents, and we keep talking back and forth what we want to do and change to make them specifically to the way I want them to be, and that's all stuff that's going to come. But I can't do anything until everything's here.
Right.
But it's coming.
Right. I think the pandemic's ruined a lot of things this year. Like, it's put so much stuff on hiatus.
It is what it is. I think the world needed to be. I used the pandemic as an Etch-a-Sketch. Remember that kid's toy? You drew on it for hours, the little red thing with the knobs, and then it was good. That's what the world needed.
And if tablets, so
no, but that's what we needed. That Etch-a-Sketch. We needed the whole world needed a shake. And now every single one of us is looking at, well, how can we get back to the way it was? If we have that mentality, we've failed. Because that's what God is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you're just starting
You've
over.
got to keep evolving. Just keep evolving. Just like you stated with your enclosures, with your isopods, that you keep kind of evolving what you're doing, like how you're, adding different things, the different vents that you're, designing and stuff like that. That's
he was asking me about this thing behind me. This is the Beast Vivarium. It was like a 5-part video. I'd never done. I don't know how to do anything small. I have no idea how to do anything small. I see these people designing, I've got this beautiful little decanter bottle. I'm going to plant it up as a vivarium. I have no idea how to do that. I can only do big things. And everyone says, oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it's garbage because there's one thing or another that I don't like about it that doesn't work. This plant is not thriving here because of this, or this one's not doing well because of what can I change and how can I make it? So I have all sorts of ideas of what to do with it.
It's like an artist looking at their painting. They're always going to find the flaws in it regardless.
No, that's a horrible analogy. It's more like
for this vivarium it is.
It's more like an insane mental patient that's off his meds.
Artist art. And artist art. You should see all the paintings I have behind me. You want to talk about that person isn't a little mentally got something going on?
The good ones. The good ones are crazy.
As long as we have our passions.
Exactly. And so I'm actually going to piggyback on, because talking about the bioactive enclosures, and I'm really happy that you brought that up. So that was one of my questions with keeping so many different types of, obviously the aquariums are going to be bioactive in essence, of course, because it's all the plants and everything. But what animals are you currently keeping in bioactives? And have you noticed a difference in changing them from a regular into a bioactive enclosure?
That is a super easy question, Nat. 0. And the reason it's 0 is because of the pandemic. The reason my room evolved and changed so dramatically was because of the pandemic. It wasn't just that I said, hey, I want to diversify from just keeping fish. I couldn't access fish. My main tropical wholesaler, the main one, and this is a guy that I've traveled to multiple areas of the world with. He's imported fish from all over the world. Throughout this entire pandemic, this entire year and a bit now, since I think January of last year, he's only been able to, at the best of times, only been able to import from 3 airports in the world. Miami, Bogota, Colombia, and Belém out of Brazil. And that is it. And my interests are all over the place and diverse, but they're always fish that I can tell a story behind. So I don't have a whole bunch of tanks, but the stuff that I have, I want to be able to do that, tell the story behind it. When he couldn't access, Miami, you're getting from all the main Florida fish farms. It's primarily a lot of the African cichlids and things like that. Not my cup of tea anymore. Everybody can do that. And when you go to like Bogota's got a lot of the very basic tropical fish. A lot of the stuff, like a lot of the basic catfish and stuff like that. There's some sexy stuff, but not as much. And it's a lot of the bread and butter. Not my cup of tea. And the stuff coming out of Brazil is primarily all the very, very expensive, high-end, fancy plecos. Not a lot of the weird stuff, because Brazil has a lot of very specific laws about what can come out, what can't. So I haven't really accessed a lot of fish. I want India, I want China, I want weird stuff, and I don't have access to it right now. So getting back to, I haven't forgotten your bioactive, I started diversifying. So I reached out. Last September, I was supposed to be the keynote speaker at a big, giant pet expo in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, one of the big capital cities. And it's a huge expo, and I was going to be the big guy. And that guy that runs those expos, I've known for years. I've spoken there before on rattlesnakes many, many years ago when it was small, but now it's all-encompassing pet. I reached out to him, and I says, I need to do something. What do you got? So he sent me all his lists. And that's how I started. I started getting big female tarantulas that are display tarantulas, because I can talk about individual species, different types of habitats, because they're diverse. I could set them up in these beautiful habitats. Have I added springtails to several of the ones that are more tropical? I have, but I don't know if they're thriving, because tarantulas, for the most part, are not really, well, at least the ones that I have larger ones of, are not really ones that are sitting in like a rainforest. And springtails will die in an arid type environment, dry environment.
Depending on the springtail, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the ones at least I have available. I have two species. I have peach and I have white. And that, that's all I can get.
Those don't do well.
So I've got a whole rack of tarantulas there. These are all different types of slings and different types of tarantulas and stuff like that, growing up for different projects. But every single one of them that I have is something that's something unique that I could tell, either from a science standpoint, I can tell a story, I can watch it develop. I like to see, I don't want to just go out and buy, like with your tegu, if that's a pet and that's your pet, you didn't just go out and buy a full-grown adult and go, ta-da, here's Teddy. Like that's, you wanted to grow it up and it became your animal. You worked with it and you know that animal and it knows you. That's the same thing I like to do with the slings too. But I don't handle my tarantulas. We talked about venomous snakes, and you want to get to that topic and stuff like that. I don't handle really any of these animals because they don't get anything out of me handling them. I know that's opening up a massive can of worms to some people.
No, it's not.
Some people argue.
It's
For
not.
you guys, that may be, but unless the animal's like holding a tegu, it's not going to affect the animal anyway, but it's not taking anything from the experience at all. I don't personally. Maybe a tegu, maybe a big iguana. I think when you've owned these animals long term, I think some of the larger species, I think they can develop bonds per se. But like a tarantula doesn't have the mental. Yeah, that's fair. But a tarantula doesn't have the neural capacity. It doesn't have a brain like we everybody wants to humanize things. We have this, so that animal should, and it should love me. And it doesn't work. It's not the case. So
No,
I purposely don't do that.
My springtails absolutely love me. So can't tell me different.
He has to hold them all the time, all 50 million of them.
But all the other terrariums, like I have 2 terrariums that are below here. They're completely empty right now because the animals were supposed to be coming from Indonesia. They would have been fully bioactive. But I also have set up the terrariums for them. They're completely just bare glass with some plants and pots in them. But they're set up in a way, the way in the rack and the way the whole system is designed, that I can't go and put a bunch of supplemental heating short of like a heat mat attached somewhere. I don't have the space above to do a lot of stuff. So that's limited what I want to do. I had because those haven't come. I had an opportunity the other day. I was going to order some fire skinks from Africa. A beautiful species, a species I can talk to, a species I could breed, have it long term and watch it evolve, but it needs more supplemental heat than I can provide in that environment. I could put it somewhere else, but I'm not prepared to do that. And I really don't want to bring any more animals into my care unless I'm absolutely ready to do that. Over there, I have 2 enclosures. Nobody knows about them yet, but I have 2 enclosures where I got a bunch of hatchling tokay geckos. But they're hatchlings. They're only this big. And tokay geckos are very near and dear to me. This is 25, 30 years old. I've worked with and I've bred them, but tokay geckos recently got placed on CITES appendix. So when they're placed on CITES, that means they're becoming critically endangered. But the collection quantities have not changed yet, which is odd, but it will. And that means what will happen is the pet store common tokay gecko, maybe in 2 years, 5 years, eventually will just vanish. And then the world will have to catch up with captive breeding to get it to that point. Because right now why would I bother captive breed when it's so cheap to get it out of the wild? That's just the nature.
Yeah, that's understandable. And that goes on with quite a few species, definitely. So but for my tegu, you can get a wild caught one. Well, I'm going to say wild caught from Florida because there's multiple colonies down there. I do. But you get one $75, $100, or you can go to a reputable breeder and spend $200-$300, but you know what you're getting. Like you mentioned, like these puppy dog ones that you kind of get, which I'm not gonna lie, I hate that term because either way, you still got to put the time and effort into this lizard. It's not just going to be a puppy dog. And I know quite a few people who learned that the hard way. Yep. But yeah, so I completely understand about
this whole finger had to be rebuilt. Yeah. This whole finger had to be rebuilt from Nasty grabbing me one time, and I was not scented. I didn't have animal or anything on my hands or nothing. It was always, everything was done with tongs. It was just the wrong time, the wrong place, the wrong thing. Anybody, and like, I know this is going to open a can of worms that a lot of people don't like, but years and years of experience of working with dangerous animals myself, and I'm definitely not an expert in any of it, but I've kept a ton of venomous snakes and stuff like that. I've worked with a lot of crocodilians not necessarily crocodile, let's say alligators in the wild and stuff like that, but I'm definitely not an expert. I don't have them in my backyard. But when I see people with, and I've had big constrictors and all that stuff over the years, if I see any individual, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and he's got a 12, 15-foot snake. I don't care which one it is. It's irresponsible, in my opinion, because that animal is, it's never done that before. And you see these headlines, which are horrible for the industry. Fluffy's never done that before. He ate our chihuahua. I'm like, that's surprising, considering you fed him a bunny the last week.
Yeah.
I just saw a picture on Facebook the other day, and there was literally an alligator sitting on a couch, and there was like a 9 or 10-year-old girl, and she was petting it on the forehead. And this thing, its mouth wasn't taped, and I'm like, yeah, it could have been a family pet, and you've raised it to that point. But if that animal just snaps, I'm sorry, your daughter's in absolute disastrous carnage.
I'm the
scarred for life, everything, right?
I'm the same way. Yeah. No. I have a 3-year-old, and I don't want her around like any snake bigger than her, like any reptile bigger than her.
Yep.
So that's just not.
I completely get it. That was something that my partner and I had to discuss when I got the tegu. Will you be able to handle if she gets aggressive? And she has. Her nickname is Sweet Dionysus, but she has gotten aggressive, and it was something that triggered her that I won't go into. It's kind of a long story. Mm-hmm. It was, our fault that it happened, but I was definitely well prepared. You can't be scared to pin an animal down, and it's a wild animal regardless of how long you've owned it or how long it's been in your care. So
these animals aren't domesticated in any way,
no.
Egyptians were working with cats, we're going back hundreds and hundreds of years, right? The Egyptians were working with cats, and and the dog's been changed. For those that you guys, some of you may follow me, that I have a farm. We don't have a farm, like a full-on farm. We have a certain type of breed of pigs, and we have a certain breed of cow. And our cows are Scottish Highlands, and Chewy is our bull. And yes, he is petting zoo quality. He's super, super docile. However, he's still an 1,800-pound bull with horns that are almost 4 feet across, that are this big at the base, that don't shed like a deer or a moose or anything. These things stay with him until he dies and just get bigger. When Chewy wants to do something, he's doing it. It doesn't care if you're in the way. I put down food this morning for Betty White and Cheese, 2 of our Cooney pigs. And Chewy was way out in the field. I thought, I'll just put it on the ground for them instead of normally lifting the big bar, going in the shed, feeding them in their dishes that only they can get to. Of course, Chewy comes running, And I'm like trying to push him out of the way. He does not care. He is like a full-on honey badger. I'm taking the food, whether you like it or not. It is what it is. But you just have to respect that. You have to understand, to work with these animals, and working with, I don't want to compare an experience of working with an alligator in the wild or a big giant reticulated python to owning a cow. But like, you just have to respect it. A Chihuahua can be a dangerous animal. Yeah. The golden retriever is the most dangerous dog in the world because of the amount of bites. Well, it's kind of a skewed ratio because there's probably more golden retrievers than most other dog breeds, but still is. Years and years of inbreeding and the genetic, the problems and stuff, that becomes an aggressive animal. It can be. You just have to respect it.
Yeah, any animal has that potential. So, because they can just snap. So, God, where were we?
I told you I was going to totally derail you, and I told you that. I gave you the warning.
You did. No, it's okay. I'm on it because you started talking about pets and things like that. We're going to go ahead and bring it to, do you have any success stories with certain pets that you have, or not pets, but certain animals, or maybe tanks that were just like, okay, I got these particular fish and they thrived or something, or, just something that
fish is a big one. Like my interest in fish and my interest in like with the science is like, we've talked about it enough already. Like with fish, my interest is captive reproduction. I view every single fish I've ever kept, as a puzzle. And my goal is to put together that puzzle. The goal is to have them reproduce in captivity. And that means that I have to play around with water chemistry, water parameters. I have to simulate rainstorms or barometric pressure changes. I have to stimulate different types of food sources to stimulate. You look at the Amazon basin. Every fish that lives within the Amazon basin is somewhat a seasonal spawner, because seasonally the Andes ice caps will melt. And when that massive amount of ice and water melts, it rushes down the mountainside and it hits the Amazon and the forest floods. Everybody knows this, right? Like it's not, I'm not telling you anything that's new. Yeah. But watch any National Geographic story, you'll know that the Amazon swells, and it swells for miles inland and calls this flooded forest. Well, this is generally when most species will breed. And the reason being is you have this massive influx of cold water, so you have a temperature change, right? Depending on how close they are to the Andes versus how far away, can be the degree of how much change they may need as what we call trigger to breed. They also have, with it rushing down the mountainside, you get all this massive erosion of all this decayed vegetation, any dead animals, insects, everything is flushed into the Amazon, right? So what's going to happen? Your oxygen potential is going to change dramatically depending on the level of water, because all of a sudden the forest is flooding. The Amazon's not a rushing river anymore. It might be stagnant pools for miles. You also have a massive influx of food sources that animals never had access to generally. All these insects and everything that was on the forest floor is now in the water column. So you have food, you have temperature changes, and temperature is going to change. Even though the flooded forest is now, there's certain fish that wait for the forest to start to recede when the temperatures go higher and higher and higher, and then they breed. So temperature, you get food, you get all these things. Everyone, chemical change, you get acidification because you get all this decaying vegetable matter. Each one of these are triggers, and every fish that comes from those areas may need one trigger, may need not if it's been captive bred for a while, or it might need a multitude of these triggers. I used to years ago, and I don't want to go too much more on fish because it's not really the main topic for you guys, but like one of my old fish rooms, I used to actually be able to somewhat pressurize it to mimic a barometric pressure change, inducing fish to breed, simulating a storm. It's crazy stuff. Now, when we talk about other successes, and I'll digress and go to something totally different. This will it's going to date me again. But green iguanas. Green iguanas are kind of maligned in the industry unless people can really, really house them properly. We're dealing with a 6 or 7 foot animal. Mature males, you may as well own a chimpanzee. When a mature male sexes out, he becomes dominant and he will generally become aggressive. I don't care who you are. And
every season.
And like I can fully tell you in full honesty, I have seen a full-grown adult male iguana kill a cat with its tail. One whip of its tail. It's like an armored coach whip. One whip, and the thing dropped dead. It's a horrible story, but I've seen it personally happen. Now,
I used to live in Florida.
Yeah.
I've seen some things with iguanas. Oh yeah, I can attest to that. That strength of that tail is, and the sharpness of it's insane.
Now you go
it's like
back.
A saw blade.
Captive breeding of iguanas is not something you ever hear about average hobbyists doing. You always hear about it's like a farm. Florida, they run feral and stuff. There are giant farms and stuff. They're always in a tropical climate because they need these large areas. Males will have a large harem of females. They'll be the dominant male and breed with all of them. I was one of the very few people where I was only a kid at the time. So we're talking, this is probably mid-'80s. I was probably in my 13, 14, 15. But I got somehow involved in this panel. I see my phone ringing here, so I'm just going to silence it. I don't know why it's ringing. But I somehow got involved in this panel. This is long before the internet. This is all handwriting letters. And I don't remember how I got involved with it. Somebody must have recommended me to it because I never had the problems that everybody was having with iguanas. This is before Zoomed or Exoterra or any of these manufacturers that had all reptile products. But one thing that was absolutely critical that most people never knew about was vitamin D3. And we get vitamin D3 from sunlight, right? Well, how do you synthesize that? Back in the day, you'd sell a reptile, you'd go get bird vitamins, maybe a cuttlebone to float in your turtle tank. You know, there wasn't any, maybe you fed it cat food. We had no reptile products. We didn't know what we were doing. But the one thing I was successful with these green iguanas is I had a large open tank in my bedroom as a kid with a huge tree coming out of it. And I had a friend of a friend that worked at Hydro, which is our electric company here, Manitoba Hydro. And he got me repurposed Hydro streetlights, like the big street lights that you have on your street. Well, at the time, they were mercury vapor. Now, a lot of them have gone to sodium vapor. If your street lights are kind of an orange cast, they're sodium vapor. And now they're trying to make them more energy efficient by switching over to LEDs. Huge cost savings. But these mercury vapors, were 175, 250 watts, but they also emitted naturally that D3. And that D3 is because of the type of glass that the bulb is actually manufactured with. Because you guys can go to work and sit under fluorescent lights at work all day and nothing's going to happen. You might get a headache. But you go and spend 15 minutes in a tanning bed, those are fluorescent tubes, and you get all pink and you're warm. Like there's a difference because the type of glass that is used to make those special tubes is called quartz hardened glass. And that glass actually lets the UVB rays out. And that's when reptile bulbs all of a sudden kind of hit the mainstream. Well, I was on this panel because I had no problems with the crystallization of the fatty tissues, the wonky jaws and stuff like that. These are all attributes that affected the reptile husbandry for any animal that needed sunlight. Bearded dragons never had arrived in the hobby yet. Leopard geckos hadn't arrived. But we had green iguanas, we had tegus, we had corn snakes. But it was really those tropical lizards that needed that high sunlight. And everybody couldn't figure out. And I kept saying, well, I'm not doing anything different. This is my cage. Here's a picture. And it was a slide you'd have to take with a camera and go get it developed and send it. I'd send it off repeatedly. And it was years later, people figured it out. But I actually was able to reproduce green iguanas in captivity. And that's something that's almost never heard of in a home.
And that's back in the day. That's like in the 80s.
That's 80, 85, 86, something like that. Yeah.
My parents, when I was little, so back in probably almost 1980, not quite, they had green anoles breed for them. Mm-hmm. And nobody in the area knew what to do. They were just like, what? So nobody had heard of that in captivity. So that was kind of cool. That's their story. They don't know what they did to do that. They have no idea how it happened themselves, but it's interesting. If it happens, it happens in that case. But it sounds like you were really doing it right.
Yep. I like the animals that I liked, like I always find that aspect of like trying to find out more about them, whatever you could. I remember, like, it's going to go back to the fish side, but in one of my talks, there's a certain fish. There's a lake in Africa called Lake Tanganyika. It's a huge rift lake. It's not the most popular lake. Most people think of Lake Malawi, but Lake Tanganyika is a much older lake, and the fish have evolved a lot longer. So if you look at fish from Lake Malawi, they're generally blues and yellows and oranges and stuff like that, but they're all similar generally in shape. And then you go to Lake Tanganyika, there's a lot more, holy crap, weirdness, giant heads and streamlined and laterally compressed and weird and more unique species because it's older. But in that lake, a large group of the assemblage of freshwater fishes within that lake are called neolamprologines. And there's hundreds of species of lamprologines in this lake. And they inhabit every aspect all the way around the lake in all sorts of different types of niche. Now, in the southern part of the lake, and the lake is a giant chasm. So it started like this and eventually just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So speciation happened where a fish here was on both sides of the lake. And then as the lake evolved, this fish here is now on two separate parts of the lake, but can't traverse the lake anymore. So this fish will evolve a little bit different traits or a little bit different color pattern than this one over here. Now, in the very bottom southern portion of the lake, there is a species called Neolamprologus sexfasciatus. And it comes in two colors. It comes in a yellow form with brown stripes, 3 brown stripes. And there's kind of a blue form with 3 dark blue blackish stripes. No big difference other than it's the same fish. At the very southern portion of the lake, the yellow form is on this side, and it looks identical. It still can't traverse the open water because there'd be predators there, but it hasn't evolved to the point that the lake isn't old enough, this area isn't old enough that these fish have separated in regards to becoming new species. But below that, in the southern part or bowl, is where the blue form exists. There is not every single neolamprologine or lamprologine in the world breeds exactly the same way. Some may spawn in a crevice, some may spawn under a rock, but they all breed exactly the same way. They are all platform spawners. The blue form has never been bred by anybody in the entire world in captivity. And nobody can figure out why. 13 years of my life studying that fish. Hundreds of wild-caught specimens, dissections to figure out what's viable, what's not. Hundreds of letters written to the different areas, the geographical areas over there to get water parameters, seasonal water parameters. I was hell-bent set that it had to be some sort of an insect that would cyclically use that area to breed, and either they would die and fall in the lake, become a food source, or they would use the lake and become a food source. I don't know. And I thought that would be a logical, scientific reason that would cause a chemical reaction in the females to cause them to produce eggs, that being coming into breeding. But well-known, well-accepted people like Ad Konings, people that have spent countless thousands of hours underwater observing these fish, have shown that this fish breeds year-round. Nobody in the world has bred it to this day. Why? That fascinates me to absolutely no end.
That's crazy that the other one gets bred nonstop, basically. And,
yep. And they're all easy. I don't want to say they're easy, but they are all, once you've started with those type of fish and you've bred one, it's pretty simple to go down and do almost every other one. Some just take a little bit longer to mature, okay. But otherwise there's no real challenge once you've done one of them.
All right. So our follow-up to the success stories is you've been in the hobby forever, or the hobbies sure. Forever. So we always ask, because people are intimidated to share their failures. So what is one of your failures that you've had that, or maybe more than one, because that's how you are?
Multiple failures. I have not been successful in breeding Neolamprologus sexfasciatus. There's a well-known guy here, Mr. Jim Cummings, and he bred a certain fish from Madagascar that I tried 3 times, and he was able to breed them. He's in a handful of like 5 people globally that have had success breeding the fish in captivity, and kudos to him. But I know exactly why I failed. I didn't have patience. I tried to rush it. I tried to do the blind pair, like the blind date method of things that are extremely aggressive. It's not going to work. I landed 5 full-grown adults in a 750-gallon aquarium. Now, to give you a scope size of that, It's an 8 foot by 4 foot by 3 foot tall aquarium full of like trees and everything. And in the bags floating in this tank to acclimate them to the temperature, they were trying to kill each other. They bred. I ended up with 2 pair and 1 extra, and they bred regularly, but they always bred and laid their eggs on the wall of the tank. Every time I took them off, they wouldn't work. If I put something in the place for them to lay on instead, they would do it beside it. I tried for years, and I never had success. Where people that did have success had patience and started with juveniles and grew them up and let them, grow through their awkward teen years of, oh, it's a girl. And then, then they went clubbing and, then they had a few drinks. Then they finally hooked up. That's how it works. It doesn't work for me that way. So, but I'm sure that I failed more times. That's how you learn, by failing, really.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
This is a failure to me. My isopods, I'm failing some of my isopods because of the way I'm keeping them. I can do it better. And that's all part of evolving.
Now, what's your definition of failure on that? No, it doesn't really work. No. I want to hear about a tank that crashed or.
Oh, I've had tanks. I've had tanks that have exploded.
Well, that's different. Like, is that your fault? Do you know what it was, or do you know what it was that caused it to explode? I've
had videos on my channel. I have an automatic water changer system. It's not running right now because I've been moving everything around and changing. The whole room's going to be completely different. But if you go back a year and a half ago, I had a 160-gallon tank that was on the wall in front of me and an automatic water change system. Now, I live in the country. When I lived in Winnipeg and I lived in the city, it was city water. I didn't have to worry about it. Everything was good. It was a full system. I had several systems, a bunch of valves, and literally it's all controlled by timers. When I came here, my water that comes out of the ground has a lot of things that are not conducive for fish keeping. A lot of weird little minerals, magnesium's really high, copper's really high, some oddball little minerals. And using water softeners and making water softener salt isn't really conducive as well for doing what we want to do. So I had to make reverse osmosis water. But if you're doing smaller scale changes and putting a little bit of well water in, it's fine. But I left it on. I didn't want to do it fully automatic because I wanted to control it. And putting that level of control in place in my brain, I thought I was doing the right thing. But without that backups, I left that water changer on and the water plummeted to, I think it was like 55 degrees. You're talking fish that come from 80-degree water, Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And it plummeted. The whole tank was condensing on the outside. All the fish were upside down, laying on their sides. And I filmed it. To me, I am completely transparent when I fail on things, and I will show that to everybody. And I was terrified that I literally killed this entire tank of fish. But if you add some salt and you gradually bring the temperature up a degree or two at a time, and salt helps the fish, it acts as an irritant. So the fish's natural defense is going to cause more protein, more slime coat, which is their defense, which is what's gone. Their whole slime coat's gone when this happens. So I'm trying to help the fish in the best way I can. I'm just diligently watching their reactions of how they react. The next morning or the next afternoon, when it slowly got to temperature over a 18-hour period, I didn't lose a single fish, and I didn't have a single fish breakdown with any sort of very common parasite called ick that people are very known. Like every beginning aquarist will experience that. I had a 160-gallon tank of some of the rarest fish in the world from Central America, and I didn't lose a single one. And you want to talk about failures? In my videos, I talk about it. I did that again. I did the exact same thing to that tank twice.
I did
what
that
a
with
jerk.
My crested gecko. So my crested gecko escaped because I left the door open, and 5 days later, I left it open again. The second time he escaped. Like he was gone, and my cat found him. So, and by found him, I mean just pinned him to the floor. Like he was fine. Not a scratch on him. She just was like, "Hey, is this supposed to be here? Because I don't recognize this guy."
When we were getting our original house in the city to move the first time, I had a bunch of snakes still, and I didn't have any venomous at the time because my first two daughters had been born, and that's really what got me out of venomous snakes. It wasn't worth the risk to me. It's not a matter of whether it could hurt them It's a matter of whether it can hurt me, and they need me. They're dependent on me as a provider, as a father for them. So to me, it's not worth doing some of these things and risking it. But I was keeping Eastern indigos, white-lip pythons, Brazil pythons, or Brazilian rainbow pythons, Dumeral boas, some weird things. And the most aggressive snake I had by far was the white lips. White lips are just baby steps from going into venomous because they're just crazy aggressive all the time. They're a true python, but they're a wet python, which means they generally like a wetter habitat. So they just glide through hooks if you want to hook them. And like, again, I don't tame any of my animals. I don't handle them. I want them to be the way they are. And to me, it's all about observational. And these white lips were just crazy violent. And the big male was my garbage can. So if I ever had an extra rat, like to me, when you have 60, 70, 80, 100 snakes or lizards, you take out everything on feeding day and you defrost everything. Yeah. And then you go around and feed like, oh, this one's blue, meaning it's about to shed. It doesn't eat. So now I've got an extra this or an extra that. Well, he would be the garbage dump for whatever was left. He would eat another jumbo rat without question. And
shedding or not, yes.
Yeah. And the two stories that happened with him is just before we were getting ready to sell, people were coming in the house now. Like the house is ready to go. People are coming in and viewing the house. He was loose. The male white lip was loose. He broke out of his cage and we could not find him. And I tore a house apart. I was actually, I had a thing for doing heat checks to check for heat signatures in a wall. I was going like, I'm just terrified. This thing's going to lunge out. It was a violent animal.
Matt, you and your partner go to look for a house, and he just gets this. Sorry, I almost slipped. This freaking python wrapped around his leg. What
they're not a big snake. Like I think he was about 7 feet. In diameter, he'd only be about like this. And they're just kind of jet black with white undersides. But when they freshly shed, they're absolutely breathtaking rainbow. But they're generally fairly aggressive.
But if he's that aggressive, like say you walked in a small room and he's there in the corner. You're probably getting tagged, just right?
Yep.
That's crazy. I couldn't imagine. Crazy. I would scream like the worst. Like I left my wife for dead at a gorilla enclosure because I pissed off the gorillas. So at Lincoln Park Zoo by us, all that's there is a steel net between you. And I was doing to the female, and I did it like 3 times because I got a reaction. And all of a sudden the male, the silverback, comes flying out from inside, throws this tiny tree, just whips this tree out of the ground, coming at me, and I was gone. It was like one of our first dates. I was down the trail. There was like burned rubber where I was standing. And
I should have worn my other shirt. I have a shirt. What does it say? I can't even think of it, but it's not family friendly. And I've done things like that where I've been at the zoo and I'll go behind the bear. I've been at zoos all over the world. I've gone behind a barricade and I'll be like, all that's between me and a hippo is this one little area. That's it. And I'm hiding behind a shrub. And I've been like to a tiger cage. I've been a tiger. I do also, but it is what it is.
I have a list. I have a list of animals that I've touched. But yeah, my wife was mad. We weren't married. We were just dating. And like early dating, and I was like, "Why didn't you run?"
Well, my wife now.
Use logic.
My wife now. We met at a pet store. She's a few years younger than me, but we've been together. We've been good friends forever, and then we've been married. We've been together for, I don't know, 15, 16 years or something now. And we met through a pet store. And how we met is I have one snake that's my nemesis. And most people think it's a venomous or something. No, my nemesis is a reticulated python. And I took a big bite on my shoulder. I think it was this shoulder. Yeah, it was this shoulder years and years and years ago. And basically, it was the fact that it was winter was the thing that helped me survive. It's not the animal could never have eaten me. It was big snake. And this is why we talked about at the beginning. I had that mentality like most people do. It's like, I'm fine. I can handle it. No, not when that prey drive hits in. It couldn't have eaten me, but it could have definitely suffocated me. And I was borderline almost powerless. And people know me as Biggs because I used to be big. I used to be not huge, but I used to be fairly defined, so, I could handle myself in almost any situation, but 16, 17 foot reticulated python will basically tell you a different story. And I met my wife because when I worked at this pet store that she worked at, I was in charge. I created all these programs that oversaw development for fish and reptile for the whole company, Canada-wide.
Wow.
And the Saskatchewan, the province over where my wife is from, out of the blue, the Saskatchewan Science Center was the drop-off point for any seized animals. And in that province, all boas and all pythons were illegal at the time. So they phoned me up out of the blue and say, we just got this snake. We need you to come down and help us with it. It's a 13-foot or something reticulated python. Now, in my brain, there's just that mental little thing about reticulated python. I've dealt with many of them over the years, but it's still just, that's in my brain. So the whole drive to the airport, the whole flight there, the whole everything, pick her up, we're going to the city. It's 4 days later before I'm actually there. Walking up to the cage, I just have that mental little thing there. Like, okay, what are we dealing with? I have to deal with it. It's not going to stop me from dealing with it. But I got people that have no experience with me whatsoever. I have nobody to help me if something turns south. And I walk up to the cage, and it was about 13, 14 foot, but it was a Burmese. We're good. It's no difference. It's the same, basically the same animal, but it's mentally it was different. And I had it in an 8-foot by 6-foot something with acrylic thing with doors. And I says, well, where's the key? And they came and gave me the key, and then they stood like 40 feet back. And I'm like, what do you think is going to happen here? So all I did was put the key in the lock, and the thing was coiled up, and it just went. It just swelled up. It was like it's inflated itself. I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Oh, yeah, you're thinking Crocodile Dundee and like the Croc Hunter, all these shows and stuff. This is going to be fun. See what happens here. So I just reached in, and it didn't strike us. You know, snakes aren't aggressive; they're defensive. You know, and he didn't view me as a threat, and I wasn't being threatening. So I just reached in and I kind of grabbed him comfortably, and I felt comfortable. If you're sitting there, they're going to sense that. If you're comfortable. I pulled it out, and within minutes, I had it around the neck of my wife. And if you've never worked with big snakes, trust me, after working with big snakes for an hour, and then you get together in a car, and you have to smell each other, you're going to bond a certain way. Like it's just something to never forget.
I had our guest last week.
I love it.
Our guest we had last week, they do a traveling education show, and they have 2 green anacondas. And I'm not a python guy. I always thought like you could just choke them out, like whatever. He put the one anaconda on me, and that was the one they had with him. What's her name? Gamora. So they're super tame, docile, no big deal. But as soon as he put that thing on me, she's maybe 9 feet long.
Yep.
It's just a tube of muscle. And I was like, it totally
60, 70 pounds.
Yeah, she's like 50 maybe.
Yeah.
But I think he said she was 25, but I'm like, no way. I had trouble putting her over my neck. There's no way she was 25 pounds.
And then they kind of do this tightening because they just want to feel what they're on.
Yeah, she kind of did, but there was never a point where she was like around me.
No.
But I was like, whoa, all right. And I kept my hands clear of her face and all of that. But you definitely learn a respect for them. Now, we're at the hour mark, and we never hit our first topic. So we're going to go into poisonous snakes now. Poor Nat, or venomous snakes. Sorry. First off, what's the difference, and what snakes are actually poisonous, Biggs?
Well, venom and poison are 2 totally different things, but they're similar. They're similar. Okay, they're both basically. They're both toxins. They both are, but they do different things. They can affect your skin. They can affect your organs. They can affect everything. It can cause bodily harm. They can kill you. But a poison has to be either ingested, eaten, consumed, breathed in. But there's other methods. But a poison has to be brought in passively into you.
Okay.
Now you could think about it like something like a systemic pesticide. People, you go around and they do Roundup, and I'm not using that. I don't want to use that as an example, but like they do things to kill plants and stuff like that. A lot of these things are systemic, that the plant absorbs that. So when it says on the label, maybe you should wear gloves and a respirator when using these things, you should do that, because these are chemicals and poisons that just sitting on your skin, it's absorbed into your body. I think you froze. He's just froze in excitement because we're talking about venomous snakes.
Yep.
Now, basically, venoms have to actually be injected. Ooh, look at that. There's like twins.
There's a double. Oh.
Is there a double? I got to kick this.
There's a frozen double.
Kick the other guy out. We don't like the other guy.
I don't know if I can. He was running the show.
He's a little boring right now.
But venoms have to physically be injected into you.
There we go.
And animals that are truly venomous animals often are usually predators, right? And venom is designed as a chemical for methods of reducing their prey, either through reducing it to pre-digest or to slow down their prey source, depending on if they live in an area. Like you go somebody that lives in like a horned viper lives in the Namibia desert, it spends its whole life just waiting. If something comes by, wants to make damn certain that one tag stops that animal there that has a chance to get it. Because there's also other animals. There's birds of prey that'll come down and steal stuff. Like it wants it to kill it quick. So venoms have evolved. Venom is super fascinating to me. Venom is probably one of the most fascinating organic compounds in the world to me.
It's crazy.
Like
almost every phylum has venom, right? We have venomous mammals. We have venomous reptiles.
And no venom is the same. No venom is the same. Even if you study, like my background was mostly in crotalids, which is rattlesnakes, and you study different rattlesnakes from different regions, the venoms have evolved, and the venoms are continuously to evolve. But like when you mentioned the idea of like venom versus poisonous.
Like sorry, I had a spider visitor.
That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
No, it's not. I just left him.
You should just encourage them to come on board. But like when you said, are there people often say, well, that snake's poisonous? Well, there are. I don't know how many there are. There's not many snakes that are truly poisonous. But I can think of one. There's like a tiger keelback. I think it's an old world species. Rhaphidophorus or something like that.
It's argued that the hognose in the like a wild hognose might be poisonous because of the toads that they consume in the wild.
Correct.
It is discussed that hognose may be venomous and poisonous as well.
Yeah. Well, hognose, I did a video, and the title is this venomous? There's actually a video I did on the Western hognose snake, and I wasn't able to get to it,
but I added it to my playlist.
Yeah. But I did that specifically from the scientific standpoint, is to get people to understand it does not actually produce a venom gland, nor does it have a delivery system.
No,
it's saliva. Now they are
so crazy.
The scientific community, when we talk about venom, venom is a common word that we've given to things, right? And like right now, the scientific community is kind of on this cusp, and it alludes also to the things that we were trying to get to before, but bridging the scientific community with the hobbyist community. And the reason of that, why that has become so much of a forefront right now in every aspect of science, is you and your tegu, you and your silly ants and whatever, your isopods, you can observe behaviors that a scientist will never see. Because a scientist, generally, a classically trained scientist, goes to an area, kills animals, puts them in alcohol in jars, takes them back, and works with the dead specimen. And they they open it up, and they check all this stuff. And they can do all sorts of stuff that you and I may not be able to ever do. But they will never have that behavioral side, which is of absolute critical importance. The scientific community, and this doesn't have anything to do with bridging, but it was rocked years ago with the introduction of DNA sequencing and understanding how we could genome break down each individual species and see how we're truly associated. My family of fish, the cichlids, has been near and dear to me for my whole life. And cichlids were always perciforms, which are related to your rock bass and your perch and your pumpkin seeds and all those type of fish. Wow. And when you see a cichlid and you see one of those, you can say, oh, that makes total sense. Well, that got completely changed by doing DNA sequencing. And now cichlid's closest relative is this goby worm-like thing that only has 2 species. And basically by doing DNA sequencing, every cichlid now that's in the new world is basically we're told that it evolved from this worm thing traversing the ocean. And we're all like just grasping at straws trying to figure it out as hobbyists. But this groundbreaking stuff was put forward by Dr. Melanie Stiasny, who is a world-renowned authority of ichthyology. So her contributions are massive. So it's true. But what do we got to get back to? So we were talking about what do you want to go? We were talking about the bridging of things, or do you want to get back to the venoms?
Let's get back to the venoms. We can talk about the bridging of things, or I'll talk about it later, or whatever. I'm good. I'm good.
But what I was getting at with the venom things is venom is a layman's term. It's a common name. What we're finding out now in the scientific community, where it's really at this cusp, and that's where I lost my train of thought, is varanids, your Komodo dragons, some things like, we'll even talk about throw stingrays in there. Most stingrays do not have a venom gland. Freshwater stingrays do not possess a venom gland. And I have stingray barbs, they're just out there, shed barbs. They have serrated like teeth on the thing to go in and really do damage. But there are two striated fissures that run down the length of the barb, which is a delivery method. A delivery method from where? There is no venom gland to produce anything to deliver henceforth down this fissure. So we're talking about venoms are generally toxic compounds that are comprised of a multitude of different types of proteins and other things. But they're starting to accept the fact that venoms might not be what they originally thought they were. So that video, like I'm alluded to about the hognose, is that might eventually become to the point that, yes, this is along the same lines. Is it exactly the same? No, it's not. It's not a classic, what we'll call classic might be the way of saying a classic venom, which has to be injected or delivered. Yeah. Komodo dragon doesn't do that. It doesn't have venom glands or anything like that, but it does have salivary glands. And I think the name for that one on the Heterodon, which is the Western hognose, if the name I believe is called a Duvener's gland. And it's basically am I right? It's a salivary gland, and but it doesn't produce venom. It's different.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. But that's just, and it's only activated when they're chewing. Yeah. So I say activated, I use that word lightly, but yeah, it's very interesting how that happens. And I love that you kind of brought that to light, though, how we do have to look at it a different way, that there should be different categories within venom for sure. And so it can actually be studied individually.
I can't recommend this book enough. This book it's available on Amazon and stuff. It's out of Smithsonian. It's like a $20 paperback book. But the thing I love the most about this book when it deals with venom is it is probably, without a doubt, the best book I have ever written that can bridge the scientific side of it with the hobbyist side. So absolutely anybody with an interest in venom can read this book and go, that is super cool. Because we used to associate venoms as being neurotoxic, hemotoxic. There was only a few categories. But what they're finding now is every single individual animal that has a form of venom has multitudes of different types. So if you get bit by a rattlesnake in general, and this is very general, it's primarily a hemotoxic venom. And what that's designed to do is you're going to be getting bitten. It's going to be forcibly injected. It's going to be a large biological load. And basically what that's designed to do is that's designed to slow down the prey, but more it's meant to really quickly pre-digest it. And it's going to cause massive tissue damage. It's going to cause massive hemorrhaging, massive internal external bleeding. That animal's going to get bitten, just going to fall down within seconds. When we get bit by something like that, we get massive necrosis, massive damage to the tissues. I can tell you about it. My whole hand had to be rebuilt. It's a very expensive wound, but they call it compartment syndrome, where they have to relieve the pressure. I took a little tiny bite by a little tiny rattlesnake on the tip of my finger, and I thought it was a dry bite until the swelling started. And then you sit there with a Sharpie and you keep timing it out and seeing how far it's progressing. When it got to the point that I thought, we got to go to the hospital now, it's not a dry bite, then we were gone, because I was worried that it was going to hit my lymphatic system, and then I would have lost an arm. But the rattlesnake anti-venoms, they're just not really prevalent in Manitoba because there's no rattlesnakes here. Yeah. Everything has to be airlifted in, right? Like there's southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, and like next week, I think it's next week or the week after, I'm supposed to go to Saskatchewan, A month ago, I was there and had all my equipment. We have one rattlesnake species that lives in a certain area, and it's the most northern range. It's Crotalus viridis. It's called the prairie rattlesnake. And its range goes from the kind of badlands of that area right down through the central states all the way down into Mexico. And they live in these hibernaculums, these giant limestone kind of caves underground, because the season here is only like 3 months for them, right? The rest of the time they're underground in these caves, half a mile underground. But they emerge all at the kind of same time, as soon as the weather starts to change. And then they kind of disperse. But we have Narcissus. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Narcissus is only about an hour from me. Narcissus is a National Geographic site. It's the world's largest congregation of garter snakes.
Oh,
it's only an hour from my house.
Okay.
And they all go underground in these big hibernaculums and stuff like that. Narcissus, Manitoba. You can look it up. It's like they call it seventh or eighth wonder of the world, this weird thing. Well, garter snakes are all over the place. But this is the largest congregation that they've ever found, really.
I think they should check my yard. I'm pretty sure my yard could.
But this prairie rattlesnake, it only lives in this kind of weird little niche habitat. So it doesn't leave that, and that habitat is somewhat finite. It doesn't go for miles and miles and miles. It's kind of this weird swath of land that comes up from the States. So it stays within that area. So I'm thinking I'm going to throw my equipment in the car. It's only an extra 4 or 5 hour drive. Maybe I'll go over and see if we can play with some rattlesnakes, get you guys some content.
We were trying to find, that's what did the whole thing is we were chatting online and you said something about going to do these rattlesnakes.
Well, what happened is I was there. The reason I was there was to help my in-laws move and pack their entire house for their move.
Gotcha.
And we packed my entire vehicle because we just had so much stuff. We worked for 3 or 4 days. I thought if I got time on the Friday, this is what I want to do. But come Friday, my vehicle was so laden down with stuff. I thought, I'm not driving 5 hours. I look like a hobo.
Yeah, you had said that you had been bitten enough that you have to use a stick now to do catches instead of just barehanding them.
Well, I don't barehand anything. There's no reason to. I'm not looking for YouTube clicks. I'm not looking for likes. I'm not looking for shock. I'm not looking, if reality is, YouTube, Twitter, any of those, TikToks, any of those things, all people want is people to get hurt, fall down the stairs, get hit by a bus, and they'll go viral. And I said, that's what they want. I'm saying, so my goal now is to almost get bit, make it look like I bit and almost died so I can get likes. And I'm like, what?
I got to be honest. I could watch those videos all day. If you check my YouTube history, it's all people getting attacked by animals because 99% of the time it's their damn fault. So my wife thought I was a sociopath in the video. I think everybody's seen the video where the kids are on the swing set and the deer comes in and starts tossing them in the air.
Yeah.
No, that's hysterical to me. Everybody else is worried about the kids and I'm peeing myself laughing. And that's not their fault. That was not the kids' fault. They didn't do anything about it.
But I did want to ask a question. You said, you stated that none of your animals are tame. However, do you ever, what they call like hook or tap train any of the venomous snakes that you did work with before, or did you ever have any precautions like that?
Yeah. If you are ever going to enter the idea of ever keeping a venomous animal, I don't care if it's a Gila monster, which everyone seems to think is just as tame as a bearded dragon. This is still a very, very dangerous animal. You have to have that level of respect. And there's a book, B.W. Smith. I don't know how old this book is, but I've had it for probably 25 years. It's a very basic book. He released it himself. He's a very, I don't want to go and speak out of turn. I don't know if the guy's still alive or not. I don't know. But a good quality book on properly handling animals and working with animals. But even more critical today is actually getting someone that can be a mentor. Don't just go out and start doing this stuff on your own. Understanding the biology and how these animals work is absolutely critical. Now, if you're going to ever keep these animals, you can't. It's not a matter of I've kept venomous snakes my whole life. I've never been bit. The real aspect is that you have to get to the point. It's one moment of complacency can ruin your life. Can have devastating consequences, not just for you, but for your entire family, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're dealing with venomous animals, you are going to have to handle them at some point in time. Be it transfer to put them into sealed or containers, to be able to do their maintenance and so forth. But it can be done safely. There's labs that have been doing this stuff for years. If anybody wears makeup, a lot of cosmetics used venoms to develop a lot of these products. Anti-aging creams, oil of Olay, all these things. There's the reason that there's venom farms all over the world for develop. These things have massive medical things that we can learn from. But
that's like alchemy. They used venom in foreskins and they made makeup.
Yeah.
I read that a while ago. I don't know if that's still true. We had a comment come up about the scientific community leans towards the theory that all squamates are venomous.
Yeah, it's possible. Yep. But it's again, exactly like that individual put there, in quotes, venomous.
Yeah. What
is going to define what venomous is? Venom right now, as it is defined as a term in the scientific community, is that it has to be injected. Okay? It has to be injected. It has to be a delivery system. And anything like a lot of your snakes and stuff like that are using venoms truly have a hollow hypodermic type syringe type tooth. You look at it, you take a rattler and you take a tooth out of it, it has a little hole in the end. All the cobras, which are elapids, they all have it as well. Mambas, all these things have it. It's a lot of the stuff there's so many snakes that people have never really even heard before. All these, the world's getting closer. We can access anything by a phone call or an email now and social media. Like there's a reptile dealer here in Western Canada. All of a sudden he had all these snakes and I'm like, I've never even heard of any of these genera before. I'm not talking species. I'm talking genera. And I had to look them all up. And they were all these weird little obscure, weird African species and stuff. Never heard of them. They weren't venomous. They were weird colubrids and stuff, but fascinating animals. There's just more and more stuff out there that we haven't even seen.
So crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
it's stuff every day.
Yeah. The most important thing that we have to understand about venom is animals that are venomous. Venom is used, and it's not a finite resource. They have X amount of venom, and it takes a long time for that amount of venom to be replenished. So if that animal wants to use that venom in a defensive method, you're the jerk for making that animal use that. Leave that animal alone. Get away, step away. Most of these animals have a method of letting us know. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. There are animals that you wouldn't know, like a stingray, you wouldn't know until you stepped on it, or some of these weird vipers that bury in the sand and stuff. You wouldn't know they exist until you did something. But rattlesnakes and a lot of these things, cobras, they will give you warning signs. Just walk back and appreciate them. I've personally never kept any elapids, I believe. I've only kept crotalids, rattlesnakes. I've kept gaboon vipers. I kept one Wangler's Temple viper, and I kept, this is years ago, Schneglii, the little eyelash viper, the yellow eyelash viper from Costa Rica.
Those are gorgeous.
They're bright gorgeous. Yellow, but they're little. They're little things, but they're highly venomous. But the elapid stuff, the real reason, you want me to bear everything, be transparent. A lot of those elapids, I find them exceedingly intimidating. Like a king cobra that has no fear of you whatsoever, and if you walk up on it, it'll stand up taller than you and stare at you. That's like your gorilla story. It's got an entirely different element that I'm not comfortable with, and it's because I have no experience with it. You could put 25 rattlesnakes on the floor in this room I'm in, and I'm in barefoot and shorts, and I'd be totally comfortable being in here, and I could sleep in here overnight and work with that, no problem. But any of the elapids, I just don't have the experience. I did a 2-part video interview with the gentleman, and I apologize. I can't remember his name. It was wonderful, wonderful experience. I was down in Louisville, Kentucky, speaking, and friends took me to the Louisville, Kentucky Reptile Zoo, and they milked snakes every day.
Oh, wow.
And it was wonderful. And this is the guy that owns it is an ex-MMA fighter. I believe he was an ex-cop. But from a knowledge standpoint, like there's always a crowd while he's milking snakes, and he could tell the questions I was posing that I wasn't just the average tourist. And after the whole thing was done, we started talking, and he invited me behind the scenes, and we went and talked, and we went in some little trailer, medical trailer, where all the venom is all extracted, purified, and freeze-dried. This guy just want to see what a kilo of cobra venom looks like. And I'm like, okay, But we talked for hours, and I had to try and condense this down into like a couple of 20-minute videos. But this guy was incredible. But he's also been bit multiple times, so he knows exactly what he's doing. That's one good. Moment of complacency can change your life.
And that's just so crazy because they're so fast and so... Yeah, because you get cocky working with these animals all the time.
Well, you look at there's so many YouTubers out there, and I watch some of their videos, and like some of them are probably really, really, really good keepers. But there's just certain aspects of it, of things that, you like doing that. Great. I can't tell you what to do. I can just tell you what I'm going to do. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, great. It is what it is.
We need more of that in the hobby, in all the hobbies. So we've talked to people in every corner of the hobby now, and everybody's got their own methods, and they get very militant about it. Like, if you're not doing it this way, you're wrong. And I don't think that's right at all, because a lot of times, who knows what the right way is?
And that's why the scientific community often shies away from dealing with hobbyists in North America, because everybody can be a keyboard warrior. Everybody can say whatever they want without any repercussion on their keyboard, right?
Right.
And the scientific community doesn't deal with that. They just don't. They don't deal with the people that want to be jerks or idiots and throw temper tantrums and stuff. They don't. But the people that can throw those genuine, researched things, like the video that I think came out on Sunday was an interview I did with a very long-term friend in the Netherlands that has spent countless years going and studying the fish underwater in Lake Nicaragua. Oh, and he witnessed something that people had talked to. I thought he was the first one to see it, but he's in the video, in the interview, he talked about, no, somebody else did it. I was just the first one to get good video because underwater, the turbidity of the water wasn't the best. But he actually found a huge predator fish, Parachromis dovii, which is called the wolf cichlid. It's a massive cruise predator built for destruction and predation. And it breeds and has these massive clutches of babies, and it defends them. Okay. And there's another species that lives sympatrically with it that has smaller little batches. But the male of that fish acts as a babysitter and has a relationship to babysit those babies of the other fish so that cruise predator can go out and feed and hunt. And thereby also defends and takes care of this other pair of fish. That is crazy.
Now, are his eggs in with the big predator's eggs too?
So they don't necessarily have to breed together. It's the fact that a totally different fish is acting as a babysitter for another fish, and that other fish is basically going, okay, here's our deal. I won't kill you. You take care of my kids while I go and get some food.
So now, does this fish not feed on those fish now?
No.
The big predator fish never feeds on that particular
And if you go watch that video, the interview with Willem Hines, part 2 comes out, I think, Wednesday or Sunday. Part 2, actually, I shared a snippet of his video of that exact thing happening. That's awesome. Absolutely groundbreaking type stuff. And that's only things that hobbyists can give to the scientific community. But we have to be respectful in the way we do it. The scientific community is giving to us all the time. Most of us just don't know how to actually interpret what they're giving.
Well, right? On that note, I'm going to post these links, but I did a little research for Bridging the Gap too. So there's a website, CitizenScience.Gov, and they've got resources there to get started into the hobby scientists, basically the non-scientists, citizen science, and then SciStarter.org. Those two both have huge resources for people to get involved in the reporting in the hobbies that they're in. Yeah. Now, I know a couple of our other members of the group and people we've talked to before have done citizen science where they've gone out with the actual like entomologists or I don't know what are spider scientists called? Are they just entomologists too?
I don't know that.
Arachnologists. Let's just call them that for now.
Well, there's a great YouTube channel. I think it's called Birds BH Spiders. It's a gentleman from Europe, and he goes in scientific. He's a full scientist for what he does with spiders.
Yeah.
But he goes out all over the world. And the guy that owns Tarantula Canada here in Montreal, Canada, who's a hobbyist, has gone with him multiple times. And the two of them have experienced behaviors that you would never, ever see in captivity dealing with a dead specimen, ever.
Obviously. Yeah, for sure. Because the behaviors are where it's at now. I think they've dissected just about every damn thing they can dissect.
Yeah.
So let's look at the behaviors now.
Yep.
But yeah, there's scientists that are available to work with in the States. Amy got to milk spiders, or she got to go watch them milk spiders for a day.
Nice.
And take notes with them.
I didn't know they had little teats. Do you just sit on the bottom and you look?
They got 8 of them. Yeah. Spider tits. That's the new. That'd make a great beer. That'd be a great name for a beer. Trademark copyright. I called it. So there, yeah. So I think we closed on. There is a lot of opportunity for citizen science and a lot of benefit to it. So stay humble.
I'll give you one more example just before we leave of an interesting fish behavior. There's a group of fish. They are another cichlid, so I apologize. I keep going back to cichlids, but they're a cichlid species that is common in Paraguay, Brazil. It's a whole grouping or assemblage of fish. They used to be called aquinids. Now they're called Brusichina. And basically, this group of fish is called the comb-tail acaras. They're pretty nondescript. They're cheap fish when they come into the pet trade. They're 3-inch little brown fish with a little suborbital spot. Nothing exciting. But if you take those, buy them together as a group when they're coming in wild caught, they won't be expensive. Take them home. And yes, in a normal aquarium, they would probably breed on a rock or a pot or something like that. But if you put them in a tank and give them some leaf litter, like we do with our isopods, botanicals and stuff like that, take some oak leaves and things like that, throw them in the tank. Not too much that's going to drastically change the water chemistry, but some of those botanicals, some of the magnolias and things that you guys might have down south. You're not south, but you might be more south, that have things last longer in the water column. Or you add Amazon sword plants or any big leaf plant, even plastic plants, take leaves off them and throw them in the tank. This fish has evolved to breed when the forest floods, like we talked about earlier. Okay. It goes and capitalizes and goes off into these flooded forests. Now, the reason, I'm going to digress for a second, the reason that when I mentioned that these fish all spawn seasonally of that is because the Amazon is basically a giant V.
Sure.
It's a giant channel, the Amazon. Doesn't matter how big it is or wherever it is on the Amazon, but it's a giant channel. And what's in that channel is all things that want to eat other things.
Right.
The pilmidellid catfish, the big giant paribas, the big giant red tails, all these big catfish, the piranhas, all these giant fish that want to eat other fish. So all these other fish that we see in the pet trade, they all live on the edges, in the leaf litter, over here, hiding. But when the flooded forest opens up miles and miles of open area, that's when they can thrive. And they replenish the brood stocks of these species for the wild. But this one particular species, if you give it those things, it's evolved to live in an area, in these smaller areas that are so depleted of oxygen, there's nothing left. It's just the most decrepit swamp you can imagine with rotting vegetation. But they will take a leaf and they will breed on a leaf. And then the male, normally cichlid fish will sit there and fan the eggs, right? They sit there and take care of the eggs and fan them so oxygen and nothing, no detritus forms on them. These guys will literally go and grab the leaf and the male will take it in his mouth and swim with it to fan the eggs. And they will take their babies on the eggs with them and swim around. And I've seen them, but people won't notice these behaviors unless they actually try things, experiment. Go back to high school experimentation and try new things. That's what we're doing. That's awesome. Where it comes from.
That's awesome. And I've seen people putting their leaf litter in their tanks. I just saw for the first time on Serpa Design. He did this massive, I don't even know how big it was, but it was half
300 some gallon. Yeah.
Is that what you're talking? Yeah, that's the one. For one species of fish that it was silver dollars or something. It was what? But it's beautiful. You can't argue with the tank.
Well, the tank that we're building just outside this door here, I already have the wood to build it. My last home, I said I had a 750-gallon tank. This one here, I don't know how big it is, but the whole basement was developed around it. It's a 12-foot by 6-foot by 3-foot space. So it's going to be a 12-foot by 6-foot tank with 3-foot height.
So what fish are you going to put in there that you can swim with? Because I would be in the tank.
That's fine. But most people would think you're going to put giant fish in these tanks, big monsters and stuff like that. Yeah, that's great. But monsters can only be really appreciated in a monster environment. And that's not a monster environment. If I were to go and turn that into an Amazon rainforest with tree trunks and put piranhas or little neon tetras and put millions of them in it, wouldn't it look more impressive? Small fish in a big environment instead of a few big fish in a big environment?
I like those setups because I'm a community fish guy because there's always something going on.
Yep.
And that's why I did my one vivarium, so my crazy ants, is because there's isopods in there, there's centipedes, or millipedes, I'm sorry, there's no centipedes that I know of. There's a spider that already moved in there. There's always something going on already in that tank, and it's still in the works.
We've got to never stop learning, always experimenting. And that's how, like, to me, the whole thing is about learning those behaviors, looking for those unique things. I never understood people. Like I got all these people I've known for years have massive fish rooms, and they're always adding tanks after tanks after tanks. And I'm like, how much time do you actually spend enjoying it? You're always working. Yeah. You're always doing water changes. You're always cleaning. You know, these guys that have these snake rooms with, 700 Rubbermaid tubs with one in each. You're not learning anything by these animals. You're just capitalizing. Capitalizing versus learning is two totally different things. I'm not against it. That's just not my thing. To me, it's all about learning about natural history, learning about the animals and how they evolve and how they came to be, and looking for those things, those little diamonds in the rough.
I think we're on the same page with that, and Nat too. I think it's kind of the same. Can you hear us, Natalie, or Nat? Did you? I think she bugged out again.
It's her turn.
her mic is muted again. So that's a good time to sign off.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. I told you I was going to run you all over the place.
Yeah, you derailed the crap out of this interview. I've been derailed before, but not by a professional. So.
I'm not a professional. Do I look like a professional in any way? If you want professionals, I can get you some. I can get you some people that like whatever topics. If you ever have a random topic, you say, Biggs, I need somebody on such and such. I might be able to help you out. Send me a note. I'll gladly put you in touch with them. There's a massive community of amazing people out there that want to share their stories and stuff. And it could be just a hobbyist that could have 3 animals at home, or it could be an ichthyologist who spent their whole life in a lab. There's all sorts of things to be found by all of that. So
we will definitely. I consider us friends now. Yeah. So and it's National Best Friends Day. So now we're best friends, Biggs.
Is it?
It feels great. It is National Best Friends Day, and something about fish too. I forget. There's a holiday about fish today too. There's like 50 different things. But Best Friends Day and something about fish came up today for me. I've been trying to put that in the show, like, today is whatever day. I think it was National Sandwich Day or something last Tuesday. But you are definitely a professional derailer.
Bullshitter.
Yes, you are a bullshitter. We can get that through that's fine.
Nothing he said tonight was true.
Right?
It was all lies.
Crap, you weren't supposed to say that till after. We were going to put that in the comments. We just got 2 dislikes. Thank you for that comment. Thank you. We better not get any damn dislikes on this video. I'll go nuts. We got a dislike last week, and I want to find out who it is because, man.
It might be me. Just might be me.
Roll. So,
is it live? I don't know. Is it live? Because I haven't seen any comments come up other than that one you posted.
Oh, there's been a lot of comments. It's just somebody was talking about
guy's a jerk.
Meet the Fokker.
Stupid. He knows nothing.
No, none of that. Komodo dragon. Somebody mentioned the Komodo dragon. We talked about that a little bit. It actually has venom in its saliva, or like a kind of a venom. We need to go to IHOP. Somebody just said we need to go to IHOP together now. I would not take you to IHOP. I would take you somewhere with good food, like a Waffle House.
That's terrible food. Terrible stuff.
Waffle House?
Oh man, you guys! It's Waffle House comes up in one of my main dinner talks that I do all over the world and stuff like that. Yeah. Like one of the first lists is Awful House, and like I have a sign that says "No guns allowed on the premises" at 3 a.m. Literally, as a Canadian, that's the only place I think I need a gun is Waffle House. You guys are crazy down there.
It's better than IHOP. I like it better than IHOP. Let's see. I think Nat's trying to message me. No, it's not Nat. It's Tanner. We're trying to interview Tanner Stainbrook next week. Anyway, Biggs, thank you so much.
Anytime, my friend.
Thank you.
I had a great time.
It was a pleasure.
Amazing.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time too. So
I love it when you give me a topic that I am not going to research or do anything in any way whatsoever, and you're just going to ask me questions. That's more fun.
To be fair, you didn't talk about it either. So
there we go. Told you, it's all about me.
But we did talk about venomous snakes, and I'm glad about that. We should have got the venomous fish next time. We'll have you back, Biggs, anytime you want to come back. And
anytime
I'm working on that banner for you.
Sounds good.
Have a good one, Biggs. Thanks again.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Oh, my God, that was awesome. Again. Oh, he already logged off. He's already gone.
Oh, yeah, he's out. He's
going to bed. He's got 3 daughters or something. He's a busy guy. And those crazy cows.
Oh my gosh!
Seen those cows, the Scottish Highland? They're like cows.
I've seen pictures and stuff, and seen them obviously on TV, but never in person.
I just saw a picture of him and one of his daughters with the bull he's talking about, and that thing is massive, and it's just hair. It's got no eyes. It's the cow from Ferdinand that Connolly did. It's that cow. Anyway, that was a great show. Next week we're gonna try. He just messaged me, Tanner Stainbrook. He is like the photograph god of isopods. I love his photographs. I don't know how he gets them. We're gonna talk to him about how to get better photographs of our bugs. So
I'm super excited about that one.
Hopefully we can make an hour out of that. I think so.
We will.
I can't believe we only got an hour out of Biggs. Like that guy could talk about pencil shavings for 2 hours. For sure.
No, that was a lot of fun though, because he would definitely still have points of it to be able to bring it back and stuff. So it was good. It was a great interview. I liked it.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Learned a lot.
You did a great job. I posted in the comments at one point, like, I don't even need to be here. like I'm gonna go take care of my aunts. This is going good without me. You rolled with it way better than I did this week, so thanks for coming on. I'd still be here going, yeah. That was my whole contribution. So, you want to do the like and subscribe thing? Do it.
You got this. We'll do the next one. I'm just kidding. No, definitely like and subscribe to our channel for sure. You definitely hit that like, subscribe. We are having content every week, and your support is what keeps us going. I mean, we're going to keep going anyway, but you guys make it better. So please subscribe, all the fun stuff. And we'll also have the links to the websites that we're talking about for the scientific studies or for the civilian scientific studies.
Yeah,
for you guys to be able to check out.
I think that's something that everybody in the community can get involved with.
Absolutely.
We're already doing the work. Like, why not get it recognized at least a little bit? Like, why not talk to the actual scientists and get involved in the study? Right?
Absolutely.
So
exactly.
Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for sticking with us. We have one of the best audiences. I think the people stay with us the whole time. So
absolutely.
ISO Buddies out.
ISO Buddies out. We will be in the chat. Come join us.
Chat. See you in a little bit. I'm gonna feed those shrimp from the Mexican grocery store, the dried shrimp, to my pods. We'll see what happens.
Oh, see how that goes.
Yeah, they're super cheap and they're huge. All right, guys. We'll see you there.